What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Leaving a Legacy podcast. This is a podcast where we think deeply about God, live wisely before the world, and make disciples in our home and abroad. With your host, Edwin and Michael Griffin Jr. What's going on, my brother?
Oh, nothing much, brother. Just ready to get into this. How you doing?
Yes, I'm doing well, man. Praise God. I had a really good week. We just spent a lot of time outside gardening. I felt like Adam in the garden, just pulling out the weeds and planting the seeds. So that was
Come
a
on,
blessing,
come on.
man.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. How about you, man?
Oh man, we having a good week around here, man. Just working,
Hmm.
homeschooling, trying to make moves.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I bought some books on gardening, so I was excited when I heard you that like square
Yep.
foot gardening and raised bed gardening. So we're about to get into that too. Yeah. So
Nice, man. Yeah,
yeah,
there's something masculine about that, bro.
yeah, man.
Telling you, man. We
Right.
need to we need to recover the lost art of gardening, right?
Come on, come on, come
We
on.
we lost that in the fall, man. Adam done messed it all up.
I don't blame it all on him. Now I got my own sin too. Like
Oh man.
federal headship. Come on, federal headship.
Yes, Curtis, what's going on, brother?
What's up? What's up, Curtis?
Yo, man,
Curtis,
praise.
Curtis might look. Curtis might have unfollowed us today. He was unfollowing people. He might have. But we know for certain right now that he hasn't. Right? He hasn't at
Yes,
least hasn't unfollowed you.
yeah.
We know
So
that
he's still
much.
here. Right, right, right. So listen, tonight, man, we got a real great, good topic tonight. We're looking forward to chopping it up with you all. And yeah, man, our topic tonight is going to be the father and the elder. Pastoral training starts in the home.
Mm.
So before we get started, man, any introductory thoughts you want to share? Anything else?
Yeah, man. And I put that in the description that the scripture has much to say about the qualifications of pastors, right? And we're probably aware of all the text like First Timothy 3, Titus 1, Ephesians 4, First Peter 5, even Second Timothy 2. I dropped that one in there. People may not see where that one fits in, but we're gonna bring that in. And Hebrews 13, First Timothy 5. And
Hmm.
most of us have probably heard them in a sermon or read about them in various books. But tonight, what I want to do and what we want to do is we want to take a look at how much of what is expected of a pastor is merely an expansion of what is expected of the father in his home. So
Yeah.
that's the thought pattern of tonight's episode. So join us in this discussion.
Amen. That's good stuff, brother. Yeah, man. Well, let's get right into it, man. Let's start off with the elder, right?
Come
What
on. All
what
right.
is what is an elder?
All right. So in elder, there's so many. Wow, man. There's so many terms in the scriptures that are used elder simultaneously. I mean, they can simultaneously use for that term there. You've got elder, overseer, elder, leader, shepherd, teacher, one who exercises oversight, steward. There's so many things,
Mhm.
that describe what an elder is supposed to be. And then when we look at them, we kind of see that these are some of the same ideas that are found in the role of the father, right? So again,
Mhm.
you see episkopos, presbyteros, right? Didaskalos, right? All of these things, and some of them are things that we talked about last week, and we can just
Mhm.
kind of go through some of those definitions. I don't want to bog you down with them, but we're going to talk about them as we go through these texts. But
Mhm.
just think, like, there's so many words in there, and none of them encompass everything
Yeah.
that an elder is supposed to be, right? So many of them, and just minding those texts as I was doing that,
Yeah.
I'm like, man, what's
Mm.
this is like a lot of stuff is just coming out. Like this is really an expansion of what the father is supposed to do, and it's a lot of really good stuff in these texts when we start to mind the definitions. And I like the classical model where I take the time to define the terms. What is this? The definition phase is very important,
Mhm.
and that kind of leads into everything else. So the elder, we're going to kind of describe it as we walk through these texts. Hopefully we can build a definition based on the scriptures. But again, those texts, when you go to them, look up those Greek terms. We're going
Yeah.
to have them in the notes. But overseer, elder, leader, shepherd, teacher, steward. All of these things encompass what an elder is supposed to be. And again, we can't really. I want to come up with a working definition, but it was so much stuff in there
Hmm.
that I say, you know what, let's just let the text speak for itself, and then maybe we can come up with a working definition at the end.
Right, right. No, that's good, man. I think one of the things as we look at this is to keep in mind that this isn't something only that they should be. Like obviously, like God calls, not every man is called to be an elder at a church, right? But
Right.
every man is called to be these things or representative in these things in his home.
Yep.
And I think that's important to consider in the same way that we hold a high regard for the elder at our church. So we ought to have the same high regard for our calling in the home. And I
That's
think
right.
that's vitally important for us to keep in mind when we think about this.
And that's exactly what we're trying to bring to the forefront here, right? And even going to talk about it at the beginning and at the conclusion, is that our roles as fathers are so important. Again,
Mm.
if we're not shepherding our families well, if we're not leading them well, if we're not overseeing them well, we have no business, considering or desiring the noble task of an overseer,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right, man. So let's move on, man. So moving on, what is pastoral ministry? Or
All
excuse me,
right, so
what is pastoral training? My fault.
yeah, so no, that's cool, man. So I broke it down into 6 steps, and it probably I should have to be biblical with my numbers. I should have done 7, right?
Well, you
But
you you're Baptist, so it's only supposed to be three.
right, it's only, there you go. Well, look, we gonna work with the 6 I got here. 3 times 2, I
That's a
got
double.
you.
That's a double anointing.
Right. All right, so I looked at the text and I drew out these 6 things, and there may be some other things that we can maybe add to this later. But one is learning to teach the faith. Okay, learning
Mhm.
pastoral training is you need to be trained in how to teach the faith, right?
Yeah.
Both formative and corrective in the way that you teach it. You have to lay out the faith. You need to be able to do that. The second thing that I pulled from the text was that you need to learn to be an example or model the faith for other believers, right? So that's very important. That's got to be a part of the pastoral training.
Hey, Michael,
What's
hold
up?
on one second. Just real quick, man. Break down formative and corrective. I think
Well,
that'd be
we're gonna
helpful.
do that. We're gonna do
Okay.
that later, but I will definitely let's do it now, right? So we talked about this last week. Formative, when we discussed that, when we discussed biblical training at home, formative education was just teaching that helps to affirm and model proper habits, right? So if
Right.
you think about that, like Proverbs, where Solomon is walking through what it means to be, a man, a wise man,
Hmm.
right? You got the imperative portions of the epistles, right? How do you walk out the faith that you have? Jesus talks about it as well in the Sermon on the Mount. How we are to walk as kingdom citizens. And then corrective would have been, the teaching that seeks to reinforce proper behavior through reproof or rebuke, right?
Yep.
So this would be in this instance, it would be your church discipline, right? It's kind of like what Paul is doing in Galatians and First Corinthians. So these are the types of things that when we discuss formative and corrective, we're doing these things in our home. We should be doing these things in our home already, and then that's why it's kind of an expansion,
Yeah.
right? When you're a pastor, when you're an elder, you actually are the one who's going to be enacting this in the church body, right?
No, that's
So,
good. And I know we covered this last week, but that's an
oh yeah,
important point because the formative years, right, that lays the foundation and it's forming them as it
yep,
were, right? And so the corrective is actually building on that foundation that has already been laid. So I think, man, I think we could easily say that whether people are being intentional about those two categories is happening, right? So it's happening either in public school, we talked about that last week, or through television, or through just fun, play. And
hmm,
not that the kids can't do those things, but like this formative and instructive, they really are two sides of the coin that work together.
oh yeah, yeah. Amen to that, brother. Amen. Again, and that's again, it's just an expansion of what we should be doing at home. That's why we did last week's lesson before this one, because we should be doing this at home, and then that's going to lead into you being able and capable of being a pastor of more than just
Mm.
your family,
Your little
right?
flock, right? Yep.
Right, your little flock. Yeah, right. So, all right, we got a little battle, the question battle going on in the comments. We're gonna So let me get to the last six, and then we'll start to ask some of these questions
Yeah.
here. So learning to be an example and modeling, right? We see that for the pastor as well. And again, we're going to walk through all of these texts. Don't worry. When we get
Mhm.
a chance to see what it is that this is saying, and we can come back and check my work, all right? Learning to lead, all right? The
Mhm.
pastors have authority. They have to learn how to lead well, and not just and we're going to see what it means to lead well. Learning how to steward, right? For an overseer as God's steward, right? So stewarding that and also kind of has a connotation in that verse of handling money, right?
Mhm.
All right, we're going to talk about that as well. Learning to shepherd, right? Providing for the flock, right? That's a part of the idea. You're providing spiritual food, nourishment for the flock, right? You're leading them, similar to, we're going to talk about one of the texts later on, but how does it look for us to shepherd, right? Because First Peter tells us we should shepherd the flock, right?
Mhm.
And then I'll say the last one, which is also very important, but it's learning to be faithful. And I'm
Mhm.
going to pull out a little bit in the text. I'm going to pull out something that may not even be, maybe something that we may not be thinking about, but there's a part of that in part of these texts that call for us to be faithful, right? And being faithful to a church, being faithful in your home, these are two things that are necessary, right? You learn it in your home so you can practice it as a leader of a church. So I don't know
Mhm.
if there's anybody that has any thoughts about that, but
Yeah.
any.
Yeah. I think the one thing to add, man, is that, men may elevate you, but God is the one who really sees the heart, right?
Mm,
Like men could look on the exterior and say, okay, well, you know Greek, you know Hebrew, you're a genius. I've even heard people who would, definitely like put people who have leadership, in the world, leadership qualities as elders because they know how to work with money, and none of those are the standard for an elder in and of themselves, right?
right,
Before the Lord, someone has to be called. And if you're a father, you are called, right? You are
right.
called by God to be these things. So that's something that I just wanted to add to that, man. It's
Oh
important to
yeah.
keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to see we're going to ask some of those questions at the end as to what, after we figure out what these texts are saying. We have some questions at the end. Hopefully the audience or those who are watching with us will have some, questions as well. All
Sure.
right. So one of the things that we notice, and we're going to kind of walk into this now, but we always hear whenever we're dealing with these texts, right? And it's sort of, just like the guiding principle for most of these texts, specifically the First Timothy 3 and the Titus 1, we know that an elder must be morally upright,
Mm,
right? That's kind of given, right? So we don't really have to think too much about that. We can look at these texts again. First Timothy 3 verses 2 through 4 says, therefore an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober minded, self controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a
mm,
drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. Right? So all
mm,
of those are very, very simple requirements, right? We can figure out like, okay, yeah, he needs to be well thought of. He's not cheating on his wife. He's sober minded, self controlled, great, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, right? You shouldn't be drunk, right? Come on, like these are really
mhm,
simple things.
mhm,
Like, yeah, these are all very important qualities for an elder to have. But again, they're also qualities that all godly men should
mm,
aspire to,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
nothing that Paul is saying here to Timothy is groundbreaking. It's just that elders, if you want to be an elder, you have to have these qualities. You can't be, lacking in any of them,
yeah.
right? So that's kind of, I don't want to gloss over that part, right? Before we move into the part where we kind of start to see the parallels between fatherhood and training for pastoral ministry, but we want to give not just lip service, but give an idea that we understand that yes, none of these, we don't want to just gloss over those texts, the parts of these texts that tell us that an elder should be morally upright. Again, and let's see, where is Titus in 7 and 8, he says, for an overseer as God's steward must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick tempered, or a drunkard, or violent, or greedy for gain, but hospitable, a lover of good, self controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. So he's got to be morally upright.
Yeah. That's good. Hey, we got some good conversation going
Yes,
on here in the comments.
let's take a look at some of this
Let
stuff because
me
I want to start before we get into too deep into
let me
the
pull this
teaching.
up.
Yeah.
So the modern position, pastor, really isn't found in the biblical text. All right, so that's an assertion. We'll examine that in a minute. Elders, deacons, apostles, etc. But professional pastors? Question mark. Nope. Read biblical eldership for a careful analysis. We are a kingdom of priests. We don't need a professional CEO pastor, not a biblical model. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
So I would agree and disagree with that, right? The position of pastor is clearly found in the biblical text, right? Someone who labors in preaching and teaching. That's what First Timothy says,
Hmm.
right? The position of a CEO pastor, I would totally agree that that's
Right,
not found in the biblical text, right?
right.
The model that we see today has some warts,
Yeah,
as it were, right? So I do agree with that portion. Elder, if you want to get technical about the terms, right? Um, Again, we see, these are Greek terms that we're translating into English and trying to get a sense of what they mean. So yeah, you're not going to see the word pastor, right,
mm,
in the text, but you can translate the term shepherd as pastor. Some translations do that. Some translations, you know, call it shepherd. Again, the word there, it has a range, a semantic range. Pastor is one of the words that can be used to describe it. But I would agree with him again that CEO pastor is not. But again, when he says professional, now I do believe that in First Timothy, right, it says 1 Timothy 5:17, let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor,
yeah,
especially those who labor in preaching and teaching,
yeah,
right? So it's not out of the realm of possibility that that pastors can be paid for their work. All right,
right,
Paul even says that he has the right to ask for financial
right,
gain, but he doesn't. Right.
right.
So I
And
mean,
that's one
again,
of right.
yeah. Go ahead.
That's one of Paul's like reasonings for even a multiplicity of elders, right? So
Hmm.
you have categories of eldership within the elders, right? So you have they're all elders, right? But some have the calling of teaching and preaching, and those are to be counted as double honor, right? Don't muzzle the ox, right? He gives that Old Testament principle of the ox, like don't hold back
Right.
from this man of God who has been called. Now I see where he's going with the professional pastor because you can see the following question. I'll pull this
Yeah.
up right here.
Right.
Um, someone, someone who the congregation looks to teach the scriptures for full-time ministry at a local religious organization that is either a dictatorship, right dictatorship, yep,
Dictatorship. Yeah.
run by a professional, run
Of
by
the personality of the
personality of a
yeah.
pastor, or on other extreme controlled by a committee of invested local leaders. Um, yeah, so I think when I read this, and I don't know Stephen, but when I read this, it sounds like maybe he's been involved in some bad experiences. Um, and I think, man, and I don't know Stephen, so correct me if I'm wrong, man, but I think a lot of people, especially now, man, I think people think that this phraseology "we are the church" means that God isn't calling us to be a part of the local church,
Mm.
and 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 in that God's house is supposed to be structured in a certain way, not because of tradition, but because God laid that foundation out in Scripture. And I think we let people get away with too often saying we are the church, which is a truism, but that doesn't mean that we are the local church. Like we are the local church, but we're also a part of the universal body of Christ. And I think sometimes people mix that up and they think, well, I don't got to go to church, you know. I'm a priest in my own home, so I could just preach the word and send under my own preaching and my own teaching. So that's not consistent with scripture, and I don't think that's consistent with church history in general.
Yeah, and it seems like there again, like I think Brian mentioned, it seems like there's some conflating of terms happening here, right?
Mm.
Because we would agree with what he's saying about the CEO pastor and how that's dangerous, right? Where it's a dictatorship and you can't question the pastor. Where there's this guy who sits
Right.
above everybody else and he has he's given more authority and he becomes a dictator and it's his personality. Um, you
And
know,
this is, bro, I'm sorry.
yeah,
This is why it's important that you have a plurality of elders. This is why, bro. I don't believe in a single shepherd model. I don't. I think it's dangerous, especially it's putting too much authority in one man and there's no checks and balances, right? There has to be checks and balances because men are sinful. And
Hmm.
and when you have an agenda, even the best of men get in the flesh, they get an agenda, and if there's no one to check them, or this is another thing, if and it's a whole nother topic, but even
I
if
know where you're going.
even with family, right? Like if family is running the church, and if it's all family, bro, you get into some sticky points here because now who's checking you? Your cousin, that's cool, but like you start to like not have a mind that's for the. You can easily get into the place where you don't have the best interest for Christ Church, but now it's the
Hmm.
best interest for our vision. So
Yeah.
plurality of elder is huge, and if you don't have one, I could see the dictatorship, right?
Oh yeah.
I could see the messing with the finances and all those kind of things for sure.
Yeah. He even talks about Paul talks about that in 1 Corinthians 7:33 say, but the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided.
Yep.
Right? So you think about that for a second, right? If you're a single elder and you're worried about pleasing your wife, for all intents and purposes, it's you and your wife running that church, right? And then
Right.
you get a female elder, just
Mm,
basically, on the side, like not in name but in function, right?
right. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. So let's see what else we have here. Full-time teachers. Okay. Did we cover those? Read pagan Christianity. Did I miss did I miss anything here?
So we got some stuff up at the top. I think Brian mentioned something at 7:50, and then Stephen mentioned something else. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Curtis mentioned. Okay, wow. He said I experienced this a few years back. Had to vote the guy out. Straight up tyrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's where it's
It's
dangerous. That's where it becomes really dangerous.
yeah, it really is, man. I'm sorry. I'm lost on these comments now.
Yeah.
How would you deal with first
Yeah.
Titus chapter 1 verse 6, having born again believing children?
And I actually had a discussion with this about with a New Testament professor at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and he mentioned to me that the faithful or believing term there isn't necessarily meaning a born again blood bought children, right? Because that would eliminate virtually almost all men from ministry until their children got saved. Right, that's but it's basically saying children who are faithful to obey their parents, right? That's actually what it's called for. I mean, that's what's being called for there. He gave me the semantic range of that word there, and that's what he believes it means, right? So yeah, I mean it again. I was assuming that same thing. I'm like, this seems really weird. Like I would have to wait to become a pastor until all my children were born again. Like,
Yeah, I think too it goes with the idea of like, are your children rebellious? Are
right.
they like showing a mockery
Mm-hmm.
of your leadership in the home and in the
Oh
church?
boy.
And if so, pastor probably need to step down, get his house in order,
Oh, we gonna
and
talk about
then
that.
come back, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's so much to dive into about that. Look, this is like we haven't even touched the real topic yet, but there's so much stuff going on
Hey,
already.
great discussion, guys.
Yeah,
This is
man. Come
great.
on, keep it coming. Like we could really talk about a lot of this. I would much rather if it devolves into not devolves but evolves into a discussion about this. Let's just make that happen. Like
Yeah.
I'd much rather that happen than we just pulling in the comments and addressing them as they come up. But yeah, we do have a prepared lesson. But if y'all want to keep walking through it,
let's you know what, let's continue, and then we
yeah,
can go back and answer, or if you see something that needs to be
yes,
answered, we'll do that. And then we
yeah,
could
it'll get
also
spicy in here.
another thing we can do is we'll save any questions we don't answer for our Q&A.
Awesome, awesome,
So
awesome. Look at Edwin thinking on his feet.
come on, baby.
All right, so how does fatherhood train us for pastoral ministry, or how
Mm.
fatherhood trains us for pastoral ministry? All right, so the text that we're going to look at: 1 Timothy 3:1-7, Titus 1:5-9, Ephesians 4 11, Hebrews 13, 17, 1 Peter 5, 1, 4, and 2 Timothy 2,
Mm,
1 through 2. All right.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
let's look at those. Let's just kind of look at those texts. You know most of them already, right? But I want to point out some parts that will help us to understand why fatherhood can train us for pastoral ministry. All right. So let's look at 1 Timothy 3. And the portion I want to look at is basically starting at verse 4, where it says, "He must manage his household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive," right? We just talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
"For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church?" All
Mm,
right. Let's look at Titus 1. All right, let's go back. I'm looking at the wrong one. All right. All right, he says here, he must, in verse 9, says he must hold, no, wait, yeah. No, actually, uh, verse 6, I'm sorry. It says, "If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers," that's what we talked about earlier, right? "And
mm-hmm.
not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination." All right. So we're going to look at the next text. It's first Hebrews 13, 17. It says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, right? For they are keeping watch over your souls, as those who will give an account, have to give an account, right? Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you." All right. And then we look at Ephesians 4, 11. We'll just look at the first verse. It says here, "And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the shepherds and teachers." Okay. And then you know the rest, right? To equip the saints. That's part
Mm-hmm.
of what they're doing. All right. So let's look at 1 Peter 5. It says, "Not domineering," in verse 3, "not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock," right? So that's a part of it. We need to be examples to the flock. And then Second Timothy, verse 1 and 2. In chapter 2, verse 1 and 2, he said, "You then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." All right. So, what are the implications of this text? That's what I want to walk through and kind of help us to see and understand. All right. So, some of the implications of this text, right? One is faithfulness, and we see that in this text here, right, in Second Timothy 2, verse 1, "entrust to faithful men," right? But there's
Mm,
also a hidden part, in I think, in two of these verses, right? This is where I want, like in First Timothy 3, verse 2, he says, "the husband of one wife," right? And then also here uh, in in Titus, he says it here. He says the same thing, right? He says in verse 6, he says, "the husband of
mm-hmm.
one wife." The faithfulness, right? How is that training us to become how is faithfulness to our wives,
Yeah.
and then the faithfulness that we exhibit to those around us? How is that training us, right? We should be faithful to one woman, and as elders, we would have to be faithful to one local body, right? We're not prostituting ourselves for like seven, or I'm making some implications here, but what you think about that, brother? You
Well,
kind of see where I'm going with this?
yeah. Well. One of the thing is, yeah, man. Like, if this is another thing that could to really take seriously is, if you can't be faithful to your wife, then you're not going to be faithful to the text, right?
Faithful to the
Like,
text, right there it is too. Go ahead, make them
I mean,
make these implications.
I mean, for real, like, if you being united to your wife and you two being one in Christ, right? And you can't love her like Christ loved the church, and not just like you struggle and you're trying, but it's like you don't love her, or you're not growing, or you're not giving yourself sacrificially and growing with your wife and discipling her and being responsible in that oneness, then you're not going to be consistently faithful to the word of God. Or right, because we see that, man, we even see this all the time with like political leaders, right? They say one thing out their mouth, but then they're straight having adulterous relationships on the side. Like, how can we trust you? Like, even
Right.
integrity wise, we can't trust you. So if the man of God can't be faithful to his wife, then how can we trust his consistency in exegeting the text?
Yeah. And you even mentioned the point, right? You even mentioned the point. I'm glad you brought this up. Think about that. Think about that. The Brian says we're done. We gone done meddling. All right. So you think about this. The one thing that you mentioned. How does Christ deal with the church?
Yep.
That's actually what we've been called to do with our wives.
Yep.
Right?
That's
Think
right.
about Christ's faithfulness to his bride and how we as husbands are called to be that same type of faithfulness. That type of man is who you want to be leading your church, to be an
Right.
example to you how to walk in faithfulness. Right?
Yes.
He says into he tells Timothy, entrust this teaching that I've given you to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Right?
Mm.
The idea is that yes, these men have to have faith. They need to be faithful. We need to see them walking out the faith, be an example already to the flock, and these are the type of men we want teaching the flock, right? Because again,
Mm.
think about this. If you're teaching, like you just mentioned it, if you're teaching people that they should not be adulterous in their relationships, but you're committing adultery,
Yep.
you are not only being a hypocrite, but you are profaning the name of God,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Israel did, right? They were committing idolatry. And God said, you're making me a mockery before the nations. And God disciplines them. I mean, we see this throughout the scriptures. We see David, right? David's sin found him out.
Hmm.
And so I think this aspect is so important. You can go, and this is, man, I don't know if we're gonna go here, brother, but this is one of the dangers of seminary, right? Is because you send these young men off at the peak of their like testosterone to go study the Bible, and that's great, right? Like good, but then like they don't have this they don't have this support from the church, right? And then they're out there to go like go lead a church, and there's no accountability. They're going to poor churches where there's no structure, and now they're called to lead. And this is why a lot of pastors leave, right? Because they're burnt out. And this is why so many pastors are addicted to pornography, because they're stuck in this room studying the text all this time, no plurality of elders, no accountability, and now by themselves, stressed out, worried, anxious, and now here comes the tempter. So man, it's so much here, bro.
Whew. Well, you went and did it.
It's
I'm not.
real, man.
I wasn't gonna go there tonight. I was gonna try to be good and just not go there. I wasn't gonna do it, but
It's
you're
a
you're
real
trying to make
problem, man.
go to the questions. We got some questions in the comments. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna let you be the one.
He says you guys done go meddling. Let's see, Stephen. So he says, so if you have more than one wife, like can you read that,
Levirate,
right?
yeah, like a levirate marriage, right? Where Jewish law requires a brother to take his dead brother's wife to carry on a line. There was polygamy in the Jewish culture and New Testament church. So I think he had a comment before that where it says, does it logically imply? So pull that one up. It's like 4 comments above this one.
Okay.
Yes, he said, does it logically imply that elders have to be the husband of only one wife, but non-elders can have more than one wife? Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
no, that it doesn't
Yeah. No.
logically imply that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like that's what, if you go back to Genesis, like God says, like there's one wife, one man, one woman. The two
Right,
shall become one,
right.
right? And so anything after that, and God makes this clear throughout the scriptures, right? Like that Genesis is the beginning for a reason. Like God goes back to that Genesis and says, this is the way it's supposed to be. And then anything after that, it's God not saying that this is the new norm, right? This isn't like the coronavirus new normal junk. Like they're talking about, like, this is the Genesis is one man, one woman, the two shall be one. And so Abraham was sinning when he had more than one wife. David was sinning. Solomon was sinning. And if anything, that just shows, man, how now God used that in his providence, right? He's not bound. His plans don't get messed up because of our sin, but nonetheless, they were in sin, and we see the consequences of their sin, right? Like we see the consequences of their sin in David's life, in Solomon's life, in Abraham's life. Like that's not a model to follow.
Right. And see, I mean, again, most people take that like they think, oh, if it's in the Bible, then it must be right and good, and it's something that
Right.
we can follow today, right? And Jesus even brings this up in Matthew 19, right? Matthew 19:3 says, and the Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? He answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. That's the assumption there, right?
Yeah.
What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to him, why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? He said to them, because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery.
Yep.
Right?
And that is right. What you just said is the answer to this question right here.
Yeah.
Right there. That's the answer. Where does the
Right.
Bible say that it's sin? Right there. Right?
Yeah.
Because God lays the foundation of what it ought to be. And God's again, right? Like God, He speaks, His law is what it is, right? And man transgressed that.
Right.
And that's what that is. It's sin.
And then he brings up look at the comment right before that. He said, but Bathsheba, wife three of four, was the mother of Solomon, the line of Jesus. Well, we can do you one better, right? Judah, Perez,
Right.
and Zerah, right? Like
Right.
that's the line. That's a part of the line of
Yeah.
Jesus too,
Yeah.
right? Fake like prostitution with your father-in-law. I
Yeah.
mean, Ruth the Moabite. Like, I mean, look, that God specifically points that out in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew. He
Yeah.
wants us to pay attention to that stuff, right?
Yeah. It,
He's not doing this in the corner saying, look, I've been using sinful people from the beginning, right?
yes.
I'm
Yes.
using I'm using man's been sinning from the beginning. So
Mm.
yeah, if I never used any sinners or people who committed sin, then I would use no one.
Yes. And this again reminds us of the absolute sovereignty of God, right? Like he uses means, he takes all things and works them together for his good, man, for his glory and our good. And so even the sinfulness of men, right? The most sinful act that could ever be done, right? And that results in the death of Jesus Christ, he uses for the glory of his own name, right?
That's
And
right.
so that's the most heinous, wicked act, man, that anyone could do is exchange the Son of God for coins, right? For
Yeah.
money. And yet
But
he uses it.
right. He said what you but killed by the hands of lawless men. Therefore
Mm,
God raised him up, right? Right, come on. Like because and this was done according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. And Brian just kind of puts it in a
yeah,
three-word format. Narrative isn't normative.
that's
Right?
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So yeah. So we see that an elder has to be faithful, right? Even in his faithfulness, like he's specifically called in Second Timothy, those men are entrusted to teach. They need to be faithful men. And we see that he has to be the husband of one wife. So the
Mm,
elder has to be faithful, right? And then we see that again in our own family lives. But then the he continues with this. The text, I believe, it also implies that the elder must be one who has authority. You can't,
yes.
right? This is something that's missed in our culture. The elder has authority, right?
Yes.
Now we talked about the dictatorships and what can happen because of that. We're going to talk about what
Sure.
that authority looks like. And if you remember what we did in our last video, we talked about how the father is, and 3 and 4 videos ago, like we talked about the father as prophet, priest, and king, him
Mhm.
having authority in the house, right? Look at First Timothy 3 4 through 5. He says he must manage his household well, and that word manage, right? First Timothy 3 2. Where does he say that? Let's see. He must manage. Where is it? There it is in first verse 4, verse 4 through 5. But that means to preside over, or by implication to practice, maintain, be over, and rule, right?
Mhm.
That's what that underlying term means rule. And if you don't believe that, right? First Timothy 5, 2 chapters later, he said, let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor. Same term, right?
Mm,
Same
mm,
exact term,
mm,
right? The semantic range, manage, rule, right?
yep.
The translators are trying to figure out which one to use, but again, the, both of them, the denotation, right, is that we should have authority. Those who manage, those who rule, those who rule have authority. And again, that's picking it right up in the fact that we as fathers are the heads of our household. We've been given authority over our wives and children. That's why I believe that fatherhood, when we're dealing with our little congregation, should be helping to train us for pastoral ministry. And again, it's not the only text. Right? First Timothy 6, part B, he says, and his believers are children of believers and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination. Well, you
Mm,
can't be insubordinate to somebody who's not in control,
right.
right? And then Hebrews 13:17 says, obey your leaders, right?
Yep.
And submit to them. Okay? Right? So I mean, you can't obey somebody who's not in authority over you. You don't submit to someone who's not in authority over you. First Peter 5, it tells us, look, in verse 14. Yeah, he says, exercising oversight, not domineering over those in your charge. Verse 3, I'm sorry. Not domineering over those in your charge, right?
Right.
Wait a minute. How can you domineer over someone and be in charge or charge over them if you're not in authority?
Right. And being in authority over someone doesn't mean it should be done in a domineering way. Like,
Exactly.
and so that's the point that answers Stephen's question. Is there's a distinction between leadership and authority, and Jesus said this to his disciples too, right? Like, don't lead like them, who don't lord it over the people
Right.
like the Romans do,
Yep.
right? Don't lead that way, but be a servant.
Yep.
And that's a future episode. We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. What does Brian say? Pick that up. Pick that up. What Brian posted there. I want to see that. He says, "Submit and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus
Come
but to
on.
submit and obey." He changed the time.
But to trust.
He changed
That's
the
awesome.
hymn. He changed the hymn.
Yeah,
There
just
you
the
go.
him, trust and
To
obey.
submit and obey.
Yeah, even the picture of a shepherd, right? Like the
Yeah.
shepherd is leading and he's authoritative and he's in control and guiding, right? But he's doing this with the responsibility because this is his investment, right?
Right.
This is something that he's been stewarded over, like something that he has a responsibility over, and he has a calling and a responsibility to do that rightly,
Yeah. And he has a chief shepherd. Right.
right?
He's not the top dog. He answers to Christ.
Right.
Right, and he's going to have to answer, right? Let not many of you become teachers, brothers.
Right.
Right, because you're going to be judged with greater strictness.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Where's the question? Wait, Brian says, did you see my question above? he
Let me
wants
go
he
back
wants to
over
ask,
to
where is it? Which one is it?
this one right
Oh,
here,
okay,
Brian.
yes, that one. Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe this is a true statement? Thinking about the character of a pastor, all of the moral qualifications of a pastor are repeated and or implied for men, Christians in general. This reminds me of what he asked last week, right?
Hmm.
The difference is that the elder, pastor, bishop, overseer must be an example morally, having achieved a more a more mature or consistent walk with Christ? Question
And
mark.
I'm actually like that. That's 100% accurate in my estimation. Right. This is what I'm driving for here is that, and this is what Paul even says. Right. You can't be a new convert.
Right.
Right. You've got to, like, as an elder, someone who's overseeing. You've got to be someone. So listen, like, if a 40-year-old man like me comes to you and asks you a question about Christian maturity, am I going to be going to like a 23-year-old or 24-year-old and asking them these questions? Probably not,
Yeah.
because they probably don't have the maturity to be able to help guide me. Now, I'm not saying that. I mean, it may be like Timothy was young and he had, but I mean, it's very difficult for someone in our culture specifically to reach that level of maturity that early on in life, to be able to shepherd older men,
Yeah.
who have more maturity and godliness than they do. Again, I think that what Brian said hits the nail on the head. We've got to be able to see pastoral leadership as a man who is an example to other men.
And man, listen, y'all gonna get me started because so I think a couple things, man. I think that novice thing also has to do with, Timothy said like a novice to the faith, right? So somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's a new believer, like, and I think this is another thing, man. We set our young people up, right? So just because this young man who just got saved, loves to read his Bible, is hungry for God, right? Like doesn't mean he's to be a youth pastor. Like slow down. Like let that man sit under some teaching. Let that man be examined. Let that man be discipled. Don't throw him in a room with a bunch of other kids and just leave him alone and go do your thing. Like I see like I don't know, man. I see like these kinds of things, man. They've been roped into our tradition, right? And it's just like, well, God gave him a calling, and so let's let him be used in his calling. And it's like you're setting this man up to fall, right? Not even if it's bro, like sorry, let me just say this.
Do it.
Even even if it's, let's say it's not sexual sin, right? That's one of the biggest snares for young men, period. So that's one, right? But let's just say even if that's not the case, right? And it's a huge one, but even if it's not, pride, arrogance, the love for money, right? The lack of self-control in his own soul, bro. This is dangerous, man. And so yeah. Anyway, this is it's dangerous, man. It's dangerous. We gotta be wiser than this, you know.
Look, I'm not gonna disagree with you on any of this stuff. I'm trying to be nice tonight, so I'm because I could scorch the earth with some of the stuff that I want to say about this.
Yeah, man.
So I'm just gonna be good.
It's just dangerous, bro. It's dangerous, man. And it's sad because you pastors could not be shepherding well by doing some of these things, right? Like they're leaving some of their younger flock vulnerable by leaving them at the hands of this shepherd youth. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just it's not wise.
I'm
It's not
trying.
wise.
I'm trying everything because if I start on this, we're gonna be here for an hour and a half. So, so look, I'll just say this. Let me. I'm gonna. I don't want to not say anything about this, right? I'm tracking with you 100% on this. I think it's folly for us the way we've set up pastoral ministry. Uh, the older I get, I would never have followed myself at 25, 26 years old. Right?
No.
Like I was a fool. Okay. Even had I been born again, I still would have been there's just so much life that I had not lived, that I did not understand, that I would not have been able how would I have been able to shepherd a man who's in my position now? Right? At 25, I had no children. I had nothing in the way of an understanding of how the world worked. I thought I did. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. I was
Right.
arrogant and brash and cocky. I thought I was going to be able to change the world. That didn't change until I was like maybe 35, 36 years old, where I was humbled to the point where I understood again, I don't know anything. And I needed to humble myself and realize that what I think I am, I'm not. Okay? And then like set myself down.
Right.
Okay?
Sat down.
But there's so like because we've set up we have basically taken the world's model and dumped it and baptized it, right? We baptize the world's model. We take naive men, we put them in Bible college, right? Because again, they should.
Mhm.
Oh, little old Johnny showed him some interest in the word. Well, let's send him off to seminary, get him trained. Instead of taking that young man, discipling him, and saying, okay, this is what life is going to be like. This is what you need to do. These are the steps that you need to take. Build yourself up in teaching the basics of the faith. We're going to
Mhm.
watch you here. We're going to teach you, we're going to disciple you here, because outside of the local church, if you don't have that covering, you go to a seminary. The seminary can't watch you the way we can watch you, right?
Mhm.
The seminary tries it can, it's not the local church. The seminary is about this, okay?
That's right.
That and that's as simple as that. They're about this, all right? So that idea, we take in the world's model when we baptize it. We promise them a ministry job afterwards. I can't tell you how many people I've seen men and women who are disheartened by the fact that they come out of these seminaries and there are not enough ministry jobs for them. They have nothing. They have no marketable skills. The only thing they can be is in ministry, and there's not enough ministry positions for all of them. And then none of them are going to pay them anything that's worthwhile. They don't. Again, they have no marketable skills. All they can do is exegete the text. Well, I can exegete the text, and I never went to seminary,
Right.
right? Okay, so you coming out of school, and I can do what you can do, and I have my own thriving business making a very substantial amount of money, and it's building every day. So now I got this, but you supposed to be my pastor? Like
Right.
what can you
Right.
teach me about life? How can you how are you going to walk me through
Yep.
miscarriages,
Yep.
things of this nature, issues with my wife, forgiveness, and all these other things that may come up in my marriage, and how to deal with my children, how to deal with the fact, that one of my children may fall headlong into sexual immorality. And if your
Hmm.
answer is, well, I have nothing, no, it seems like y'all are doing everything already. I have no counsel to give you. If you can say that
Right.
to somebody as a pastor, you shouldn't be a pastor. If you
Right.
can't give counsel to somebody and walk them through things that they're going through, right? If because you're so young, you haven't experienced anything. Everything's been handed to you on a bed of roses. I mean, like what's the point of you then? Like
Hmm.
we have no need for you. Like give me some men who can actually lead, who have some experience, who've gone through some things, who actually have walked out this faith longer than 10 minutes. And don't give me that, oh, I was saved at 15 and I've been in the faith for 10 years. You just
Yeah.
25. What you gonna
Hmm.
tell me? You've been in the faith for 10 years, great. But you ain't been in life long enough to be able to
Right.
help me. Like,
Right.
so we take these people and we're like, oh, we're gonna give you a ministry job. Well, okay, there aren't enough ministry jobs. Okay, we're going to take your naivete, say, okay, we'll either continue in school or we'll send you to church plant somewhere, right? So we can build
Hmm.
our business model, right? So then again, see, this is why you should
I
have stopped me.
I see the vein coming out your neck,
You
so
should
I'm
have
gonna let
stopped
it.
me. You should have stopped me. All right. I say, but we go. Oh, we gonna have you church plant. Oh, you naive enough to go into a minority neighborhood and think you're gonna change everything. Go ahead down there, and we'll just send you with some sponsors or some shareholders, right? We'll call them partner churches.
Yep.
We'll do this and we'll make all of this stuff work. Don't worry about it. We'll give you a job. We'll keep you occupied, right? And you might get like $50,000, right? But if you had actually applied yourself and gotten a trade, you could have been making six figures, right,
Hmm.
with ease coming out, like being a business owner and saying, oh, okay, well, I got my six-figure business is running. I can join a company. I can join like five or six other men, and none of us have seminary degrees, but we all exegete the text, and we can walk through the faith together. Like
Hmm.
we can build the church together. Because you know what, we all making six figures. Like we can support this church. We don't need sponsors. We don't need to like. We just be a church that's about building families and kingdom living, right?
Yeah.
But no, you take the world's model and you baptize it, and now you got all these disillusioned people who can't find a ministry job, who have no
Yep.
skills, whose wives are exasperated because they're the ones having to follow this man who has no skills, who has no job, who cannot support them, and they're
Covered in
like,
debt.
"What's going on? I got all this debt. I got all this stuff. The dream was supposed to be we supposed to
Yep.
be the next Billy Graham and the next whatever, right?" And then they see the Jen Wilkins and all these other people who writing books and all this stuff. Man, that is not what you're gonna be. Okay, look,
Right.
just get it through your
Right.
head. You're not gonna be that person. And if you are
Right.
that person, that's one in a million. You're not gonna be that person. You're gonna
Right.
probably be the one saddled with debt. You're gonna be, that. Come on, like man, just look.
Yeah,
You
man.
should have got me started.
I know, bro. It's a big deal, man. It really is, and it's something that needs to be talked about a lot. And man, honestly, and a lot, and I'm uh, the the leadership at churches have failed their young people. If the answer is just go to Bible college, like
Right.
no counsel, no examination, no sifting, right? Like, bro,
You like the Bible, so go to Bible college, right? We're
you
gonna
know what
we
I'm
gonna
saying?
outsource the training of our pastors.
You can't come to no 6 week Bible study at the church, but we're gonna send you to Bible college for 6 years. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, man, it's not wise. It's not good leadership. And it's not practical, man. And you end up being somebody who becomes a slave for the rest of your life to the debtors, to your own lust, because you probably never even had self control to begin with. Anyway, it's a big deal, bro, that needs to be talked about.
Right. And then again, you got me started. This was supposed to be another episode. Yeah, look. And then Brian says, Brian, look, bring up the stuff that Brian is saying. Yeah.
See,
So he
errors on the
says,
other extreme.
right. Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
PCA errs on the other extreme. You have to have an MDiv and no languages to pastor,
Yep.
right? And
Yeah.
again,
And it's so, and I struggle with that too, man, because I was planning on going in this direction, right?
hmm
Of getting intense study to become, to prepare myself for pastoral ministry from a Presbyterian end of the spectrum, right? I was ordained as a Baptist minister, and then I was going down this route, and I said, man, listen, I'm about 40 years old, man. Like, I'm not spending another 6 years like learning Greek and Hebrew. Like, if anything, I'll go learn Latin, you know what I mean? And like just apply that to my family. But like to do all this, man, for the next 6 years, to not get a job and to be in like hundreds of $1,000s of debt,
absolute
bro. I,
folly.
I I got my books right here. I'm gonna just read them. I'm gonna meditate on the scriptures, and I'm gonna trust Jesus for the rest.
It's absolute folly.
Yeah,
The
man.
the 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 higher education, like the Christian higher education system, is absolute folly, right? There's no reason for it to be, you know, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, look. He
Right.
said, but then again, I got a Credo Baptist telling me how to be a dad, but his kids ain't wet. Well, my kids, they take showers. They take
I know,
showers.
man.
So I mean, it is what it is. Like, ask Brian how many of his kids got baptized, right? Like as infants. Ask him that question.
That's funny.
Come on, put the number up there, Brian, so we can see how many of your kids got baptized. Because your kids about my age.
That's funny. We
He,
gonna we
he
gonna touch on
right.
that.
We gonna leave that alone, right? Because he talking all that mess, but he used to be Credo Baptist too. So
Me and Brian got to have a chat.
right. He said one or two, right? And I know you got more than two. Oh man, look at y'all getting me in trouble here. Yeah. Well, look, we took a whole rabbit trail.
We in the rabbit hole.
We way down the rabbit hole. How do we come back from this?
When we talk about authority,
Yes.
the importance of managing his house well, and
Right.
the passages. I
Yes.
mean,
All right. So the implications here that you can't be a weak man. All right. So
right.
that's what I would say. Right. Uh, you can't be weak. Paul even tells men, just men. Right. 1 Corinthians 15:3. Act like men. Be strong.
Mm,
So you can't be
mm,
a weak man and be a pastor, which seems
mm,
to be like the exact opposite of what we're, you know,
mm.
teaching these days. Like it seems like effeminate men are pastors.
Well,
You
this
know.
is the thing, bro. Yeah, and this is again, man. This is tough, bro. And I say tough. I don't mean, yeah. Anyway, this is the thing, bro. It's like when you are trapped in a room with books, right? And you're not on, and you're not, if you don't, you haven't been through anything, right? And you just go from church to, Bible college to seminary to church, right? And you just got married, like all those time in the books. And I'm not disregarding books at all. Like, you need to be, because I think there's a realm where the pastor needs to be a scholar too, right? He needs to be a master of the word of God. But like when you trap yourself in that world, and you haven't lived life, and you haven't fought through things, then to now be put in the real world outside of the bubble, bro, that's a sinking ship waiting to happen, man.
And like you said, like you go into that seminary bubble, right? And everybody's like you, but then nobody's really say, man up, wuss. That's the Brian Dempsey translation of 1 Corinthians 15:33.
That's the BB. That's the
Appreciate you,
BD.
look, right? Appreciate you, Brian. I know you stuck with us almost a whole hour today, so
Nice, nice.
oh man. So look, the weak will meant like oh, like it's I've seen it, and
Yeah,
it's not a good look. Like you might be the smartest person in the room, but again, man, like there's very little manly about you. You're soft, you're
right,
effeminate, you're like I'm not following you, man. Like this is
right.
I'm
But
like
it's
I
crazy
can't.
because that's seen as like a virtue, right? Because that's seen like
Yeah,
spiritual.
right.
You know what I'm
Like
saying? Like
being
that's
feminine. Men
Yeah.
being feminine is seen nowadays as being spiritual.
And listen, y'all, I'm gonna be real here. It's so bad, all right, and I'm gonna go there. It's so bad, right? Because maybe you don't think it's that bad. It's so bad that we got women pastors.
Right.
That's how bad it is.
Again, because if the role of pastor was seen as manly, and it had all the trappings of what it's supposed to be: men leading, being
Yep.
authoritative, being those who are accountable for shepherding the flock, having being the ones who are the forefront of attacks against spiritual attacks against the church, right? Like guys who are the men who are to be the protectors. You wouldn't even see women wanting it, but you see women wanting it because it's like, well, what are they doing that I can't do? Like
Exactly.
it's just like what Stephen was saying. It's like a CEO position. Sure, I'll take that. Right? Women CEOs in the business world, women CEOs in the corporate world. I mean, in the church world, what's the difference? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
if it was truly if we were truly doing pastoral ministry right and doing the things that we're called to do, you wouldn't even see women desiring the position because it would be something that would be like, nah, that's a little bit too much for me.
Right.
Right? I don't
Right.
want that.
Yep. And they would be led. Yep.
Yeah, they'd be staying away from it because it'd be like, oh, this is a little bit too much manly. But then you even see like, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna be good. I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna be good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't been
Yeah.
good all night, but I'm gonna be good right now.
Nah, that's real though, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's real. And I hope we get to that, man. We'll get to that in the future because I think that's an important topic, man.
Yeah, but then the second implication of the authority is that men cannot be effeminate. Right.
Yeah.
That's where we were going next. You can't be weak. And you can't be effeminate. And I separated those two out because to be effeminate is not to be weak. For women, being effeminate is strength. All
Right.
right?
Right.
Men being effeminate is weak, but women being effeminate is strength. So I wanted to make sure that I separated those two implications out, not because I don't want to equate the two things as being effeminate is equal to being weak. No, being effeminate for women is glorious, right? A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Charm is deceitful, beauty is fleeting, right? But a woman who fears the Lord and who is rightly walking in her calling as a woman, that's the feminine beauty. That's not weakness. But for a man to be effeminate, and I think Michael Foster on his "It's Good to Be a Not Good to Be a Man, but This Is Foster." He had a really good podcast. I think it was episode 5. We talked about this, the effeminate male, how he's useless to the herd of other men, right? And if you haven't, go take a listen to that. It was "This Is Foster" episode 5. But then again, also another implication is that he can't be childish because
Mhm.
children are not given authority, right? When you have childish men leading you, right? When you have men who are pursuing childish things, when I became a man, I put away childish things. Children are not given authority for a reason because their minds cannot handle it. When you put away childish things, then you are ready to manage a household, to rule well, to keep children from being insubordinate, right? And we can see a lot of that in this youth pastor idea, right? If children are insubordinate to a youth pastor, it might be a red flag. If he can't, like, if he's got children in his youth ministry who don't respect him, it might be a good clue that he's not ready to be leading grown men.
Right.
Command the respect of grown men if you can't command the respect of children.
Right. 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 No, man. It's yeah. Let's not go down there again because I'm a.
So we're
we
gonna have to
got.
rapid fire this bad boy. 'Cause
We're gonna
it's
do a
like,
whole podcast on effeminate men and youth ministry.
look, and dude, I'm gonna tell you this. I actually made a shorter lesson so we would be done in an hour. Like this is one of my shorter lessons, but we're in an hour and 3 minutes, and I'm like, we're not even halfway done. Oh man. All right. So let's try to run through this. Let's try to run through this. All right. So
Sorry.
we got after authority, we have teaching and training. All right. And we talked about this, right? Ephesians 4:11. The he gave us the shepherds and teachers, right? Didaskalos, that's the word there. So we need to be able to teach. That's what the shepherds are doing, the shepherd teacher. 1 Timothy 3:2 says, able to teach. 1 Timothy 5:17, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. 2 Timothy 2:2, entrusted to faithful men who will be able to teach others also.
Mm.
Titus 1:9, he must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also rebuke those who contradict it. So yeah, you're giving sound doctrine to those that are in your charge, but you're also able, when those false teachers come, you're able to rebuke and contradict them, right? So the implications again here are the paideia and the nouthesia of the Lord, right? Remember, we
Mm.
talked about that. That's that formative education. We talked about that at the beginning, and the
Mhm.
corrective education. Pastors have to be able to do that. And fathers, we talked about this last week, should be doing that in the home, right?
Mm.
Fathers, bring your children up in the paideia and nouthesia of God. That's our job as fathers, right? So that anything you want to add to the teaching and training
Nope.
aspect, brother?
Nope. Let's keep it moving.
Let's keep it moving. We got wives to get back to. All right. All right. Now, this is one that may not be as clear from the text, but I believe that one implication or one of the things is being able to manage money, right? There's two parts of Titus 1:7 where he says, for an overseer as God's steward. And that word implies someone who manage a house distributor, an overseer, an employee, figuratively, a fiscal agent, treasurer, right? And then
Mm.
he also says the negative of that is that he can't be greedy for gain. So you've got to be able to manage money, meaning
Mhm.
that in your house, your household budget is managed, right?
Mm.
You're a steward over your house's finances, because when the church gives money, you can't be like greedy for gain and
Mhm.
pulling out more than you need, right? You may be asked to make sacrifices, right, for the good of the church, right? You can't be one that's desiring filthy lucre, as it was. For the
Mm.
love of money is a root of all kinds of evil.
Mhm.
You can't be greedy for gain. You've got to be able to manage money and manage your passions for
Yeah,
money,
that's
right?
good.
Any
That's
thoughts
good.
about that, brother?
That's good, brother. Nope, that's
All
good.
right. And then the last one I was thinking is provision, right? We see the shepherd term, right? And I went to Psalm 23 immediately. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures,
Mm.
right? I'm not going to want because I'm being fed. That shepherd title that's given to the pastor, same thing, same idea for us and our families, right? A man who does not take care of his household is has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. If a man does not work, he does not eat. We are to take care of those under our charge. Now, we're not supposed to physically feed the flock, right? But
Mhm.
we feed them spiritually. Matthew 4:4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every
Mhm.
word that comes from the mouth of God. And who's going to be exegeting or exposing the scriptures for us? The pastor teacher, right?
Mm.
So that idea of the shepherd is still there. We're going to be providing food for our flock, right? We need to teach them well, and we're going to be judged with greater strictness, those of us who do teach. All right. Any thoughts on that?
No, that's good, brother. Let's go to let's skip these questions.
Yeah, because all of them
Um
have already been we've
and
already run
yeah,
down.
and
Yeah.
anything we need to like kind of dig in our a little
Yeah.
deeper and we could do in the future.
Oh yeah.
But
So
no,
and
that's
I
good.
yeah, I would just say in conclusion, I would just encourage us to labor well as fathers, right? Laboring well as a father trains you for pastoral ministry, right? I don't care what anybody else says. Like, that is the proving ground.
Mm.
When they bring you before an elder board, if they're not asking you questions about like how you're, and I know most good churches do that. They're not asking you about what your family looks like, what your character
Right.
and conduct looks like, but again, how you're managing your household. That's got to be primary. Those are the questions that
Mhm.
need to be asked. Not whether you took Greek and church history, not whether you know Hebrew, not whether you studied apologetics. You need to be apt to teach. But all of that stuff is not the primary focus, right? You need to hold the faith in good conscience and be able to clearly um, teach it to other people.
Yep.
But if you don't need to have a PhD level in every or a master's level in every discipline that the scriptures have, you're going to learn that through time, right?
Yep.
You're going to learn that on the job, right? A lot of that stuff you can pick up as you go along,
Yep.
right? That whole idea where you need to go somewhere for 4 years or 6 years and just be inundated with that and then come out, because again, even when you're being inundated with it, no, none of them people are coming out of there mastering that. They're spending
Nope.
money to do the same thing that you and I can do: read commentaries, go to the Greek dictionary. I taught myself all of this stuff.
Yep.
It's not out of the realm of the possibility for somebody who's capable
Right.
mentally to do this. I'm not about to spend $50,000 to $60,000 to do that when I can go to Bill Mounce's website and
Right.
spend $99 to get all his videos for the year, right?
That
And
they
then buy
use
his book and just yeah,
that they use at the seminary.
that they're using at the seminary, the same
Right.
textbook that they're using at the seminary,
I,
right? Like if you really want to learn that stuff, you can learn it. Like
yep.
it's not out of the realm of possibility. And then the problem that I have with that is that you coming out of there and you haven't mastered anything.
Right.
You like most of them are coming out of there, they haven't mastered Greek.
Nope.
Like if I want to spend $50,000, I want to be able to come out there and write a commentary,
Right.
not just be able to read them and make sermons from them. No, I
Yeah.
can do that without that. If I'm about to spend $50,000, $60,000, I want to be able to come out of that bad boy writing commentaries.
Right. Right. No, that's real. And I would say, man, you said something earlier. I would say, if a church isn't asking you about your family and your personal life, you may want to reconsider even taking the job if they offer it to you.
Right.
Because if they don't care enough about your soul and your family before you start, right, then what is going to happen when you start? It's going to be just do your job, pastor, just preach the word. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that doesn't mean anything, right? Like
Right.
I
Right.
can I can rightly exegete the text, but if I'm not living right in my own home, then
Right.
how is that a blessing to the Lord and an honor to the church? It's not.
Right. Come on. Amen. Right. And I would say with this, I want to encourage us. We just got to reclaim the correct vision of where pastoral training should be focused. Not seminary, not Bible college. It is in the local church and the family. Those are the two areas where pastoral training should be focused.
Mhm.
Seminary and Bible college can be useful tools. They can be.
Sure.
I think their usefulness is waning
Yeah.
or has waned.
Yeah.
But
It's
there has to,
waning down.
yes, it is. With all the stuff coming out of seminary, I'm like, who? If you still defending it, man, okay, if you
Right.
say so, man. You could defend it all you want. And I think a part of we could talk about that too later on. But I think
Mm,
seminary has become an idol for some people. Anything that you're
mm,
willing to sin for,
mm,
right? No, no, we're not gonna get into that though.
mm, mm,
I want
mm,
I want to leave the exegesis of that text alone. I have a specific text that I like to use when dealing with people who will sin, right? To hold on to the idol of seminary,
mm,
right?
mm,
Oh, what you have given to me is korban. Think about it for a
mm,
second,
mm,
right? Oh yeah, yeah. The word says I should be honoring my father and mother and caring for them. But what you were given to me, I'm just given to God. Oh
mm,
wait, so you mean like you should be taking care of your wife and working to support her? But no, you're going to
mm.
you're going to give that energy to the seminary, to God. Oh really?
Ouch. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it seems like you're
Yeah.
okay with sinning for the seminary. It seems like it's an idol to me, but okay. That's
Yeah.
all I got to
No.
say. I'm not gonna say anything more. I'm gonna drop that little nugget of destruction.
Nugget. That's a bomb.
That's my one text though, man. I'm like, look, y'all, when y'all can show me how you giving your energy and strength to a seminary when you should be giving it to what God told
Mm,
you, taking care of your wife and family, working with your hands and producing something, not studying, because studying doesn't produce anything that you can like pay the bills with,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
they'll say scholarships. Oh, scholarship. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's no, that's
Right.
not the same thing.
Right.
That's not.
Yeah, man. So for those of you who are listening to this podcast and you want to know why we're here at the end, right? Like where we're at now at the end, just listen about well, I think I started it with I think I got you triggered, man. And then something you said got me triggered.
You always triggering me though. I'm like, I'm trying to be good, and you're like, Edward's gonna trigger me again, and we gonna be here for another hour and a half.
So man, this was a blast, bro. What a topic, man. I think honestly, I still feel like we just scratched the surface. So much more could be said. A lot has been said already, a lot of which we did not have on paper, but just kind of was great interaction, man, from the people. So I appreciate that. the questions, the comments, the interaction, the back and forth.
Yes.
That was dope, man. Great, great. So what we're gonna do is we have a list of resources, recommended resources that we'll have in the show notes for you guys, with some pastor, with some what's this reforming the training of pastors.
Yeah, it's an
Um,
article series from Reforming Warhorn Media. Tim
okay,
Bailey. Yeah, it was a
okay,
really good series I read through.
okay, great. And we'll have some books on there, some sermons, some music, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So, any closing thoughts, brother? Any closing words?
man, you gotta let me shut up because we'll be. I'm just gonna shut up. That's
All
my
right.
closing thoughts.
All right, y'all. So this is Leaving a Legacy podcast, a podcast where we want to think deep about God, live wisely before the world, and make disciples in our home and abroad. Until next time, y'all, grace and peace.